What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Command and Console. My name is Jason. Today we're going to have a look at my PlayStation 2 collection. Now in this video I'm going to go handheld mode and you're going to look at my collection from the shelf's point of view. So from the shelf, I'm not going to have them stacked up or anything like that. We're just going to go through the shelf. I'm going to pull them out, maybe say a few words about them, and then move on to the next game. Let's get to the video. So we're at the collection, the shelves. The first game is 007 Quantum of Solace. Not played this one yet. I do plan to play some of these, but where it's winter out here, it's absolutely freezing cold. You probably can hear the rain as well. Lots of wind, lots of rain out here at the moment. It's absolutely freezing, but I thought I'd do this video today. Area 51, spoke about that on my underrated shooters video. It's fantastic. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, one of my favourite isometric RPGs on the PS2. Played loads of that growing up, love it. Black, another underrated first-person shooter on the PS2. Might be the best looking game on the system in my opinion. The graphics are incredible, love that one. Blood Omen 2, played loads of this growing up, absolutely love it. I love the Legacy of games in general, they're all great. This is one of my favourite ones. Obviously the Burnout series. You can't have a PS2 collection without the Burnout series, in my opinion, especially when it concerns racing games. It's the best series of arcade races, in my opinion. Burnout 1 there, Burnout 2, Point of Impact. The greatest arcade racing game of all time, Burnout 3 Takedown. Burnout Revenge, which I think is pretty much as close as you're going to get to the third game, but I don't think it's quite as good in my opinion. And you've got the spin-off game, Burnout Dominator. It was originally a PSP game, but they put that on PS2, which is quite cool. So I'm really happy to have the full set of those. Champions of Norath is a new one in the collection. You will see this in an upcoming Project PS2 video, because I picked it up fairly recently. Played loads of this growing up. Another great isometric RPG. Played loads of co-op with a friend of mine back in the day. Loved that one. I missed these ones. I missed some. Cold Fear, one of the most superly overlooked survival horror games. I would love a remaster by Ubisoft for that one. Cold Winter, another game that I showed off in my underrated FPS game for PS2 video. Cold Winter is one of my favourites on the system. Crash Bandicoot, Wrath of Cortex. I've not actually played this one, but I picked it up because it was the next one in the series after the original PS1 classic games. So I thought, oh, I'll grab that one. Crazy Taxi, obviously a Dreamcast classic. Had to have it for the PS2. Dead or Alive 2, another Dreamcast port that I wanted to have in the collection. I used to play loads of this on the Dreamcast. I really like it. I don't think there's many fighting games that really match up to this one when you're talking about hand-to-hand combat. I love Soul Calibur as well, but that's more weapon-based. But when it comes to like hand-to-hand, if you're going to compare it to like Tekken or Virtua Fighter or Mortal Kombat, I think Dead or Alive is up there with the best of them. Deus Ex, an absolutely impossible port that they pulled off remarkably well. Obviously the PC version is the way to go for this game, but this PS2 port is actually quite great. The Dragon Guard games, one of my favourite games on the PS2. I absolutely adore this game. It's absolutely amazing. It's very simple, but very cool in its way that it does kind of almost like Musou-esque gameplay, but you get to ride a dragon and burn people alive. It's pretty fun. I've got the sequel, which is one of my holy grails in my collection. Never see this in the wild. I pulled the trigger on it when it was on eBay for a fairly affordable price. The cheapest I've seen it anyway, but I'm looking forward to giving this one a go at some point. I've got the Dragon Ball Z Budokai games. The first one's pretty great. Number 2 is where my heart lies. I've got loads of nostalgia for number 2. And I think probably number 3 is probably everyone's favourite. It's probably the best one in the series. The Driver games, got Driver 3. Not as terrible as loads of people would make it out to be, in my opinion. I think it's fairly playable for what it is, but it's obviously like nowhere near as good as the Grand Theft Auto series or the previous Driver games, were a matter of fact. And then you've got the sequel, Driver Paradise, which is a much better Driver game than Driver 3, set in 2 different time periods, which I think is pretty cool. We've got Evergrace, which is a really interesting From Software title that is quite weird. Like, I played a bit of it, it's quite strange. I'm not sure if I like it or not. I might have to pop that in and give that another go. when I can. Extermination's a really cool Sony survival horror game, very similar to Resident Evil, but it's very inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing from the 80s. I really like this one. It does have some frustrations when it concerns combat and progression, but other than that, I think it's a pretty decent one. Ferrari F355 Challenge, a great, like, pure arcade racing game that I highly recommend you pick up for the PS2. It's a port of the Dreamcast Classic, of course. But yeah, it's a great one. From Russia with Love, not played it. I know I've got to remove the stickers from these, but not played this one yet. But if it's anything like Everything or Nothing, I'm all over that one. Gauntlet Dark Legacy, one of the purest fun arcade games for PS2 in my opinion. When it concerns just straight up, you know, score attack, arcade combat, everything. It's just super fun. Really recommend that one. Genji, a surprisingly good Onimusha clone by Sony. The sequel's really good as well on PS3, so I recommend this one and Days of Blade, the sequel. Really good games if you like the Onimusha series. The Getaway is a classic PS2 game set in London, where your son is abducted by gangsters and you're forced to do their bidding. Really cool. People unfairly compare it to Grand Theft Auto. I think that's unfair. I think it does a bit more than that. It's more cinematic. It plays out more like a film, and I feel like it's different enough from Grand Theft Auto that I feel like you can get a completely different experience from Getaway. It's great. I want to get the sequel at some point as well. Gladius is a really unique turn-based gladiator strategy kind of tactics game. Really fun. It's got lots of RPG elements as well. Lucasfilm when they were still good, I suppose. Yeah, highly recommend this one. GoldenEye, I spoke about this recently. It's a James Bond game where you play a rogue agent where you're denied your application to MI6 because in a weird kind of virtual reality test you accidentally kill Bond in that virtual reality test and they deem you unfit for service, so you go elsewhere to become an agent. Grandia 2, loads of nostalgia for this one. I played tons of it growing up when I used to have a PS2 when I was younger. Yeah, love this one. One of the most kind of like, I don't want to say underrated RPGs, but one of those JRPGs that no one really talks about anymore. Usually the conversation is usually on, like, you know, Final Fantasy and stuff like that. But the Grandia series should not be slept on in my opinion. It's great. I've got the Grand Theft Auto games. Number 3 is my favourite out of the whole series. Obviously, it's the game that brought us the true open world sandbox game. Obviously, I don't think it was the first game to do that, but it was the first game to really bring it to prominence, bring it to mainstream attention. But number 3 has always been my favourite. Sure, you can objectively say that the series has gotten better since 3, but I feel like there's so much charm with Grand Theft Auto 3 that I always go back to it because it's my favourite. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, yeah, a really great game as well, really fun, where you can basically have your character looking how you want, and you could basically, it's got really simple, like, kind of slice of life stuff in there that makes it kind of like a fun sandbox to explore and run around in. And unfortunately, usually what I do is I usually just run around and cause chaos in these kind of games. I don't have Vice City yet, but it is on the docket. Gran Turismo 3, one of the best racing games of all time, one of my favourites. Super nostalgia for this one. Simulation racing at its best in my opinion. One of the best games ever on the PS2. Debatably, Gran Turismo 4 is even better. I've got loads of nostalgia for this. I remember breaking my ankle skateboarding back in the day, and this came out, and I bought this because I was stuck at home for like 8 weeks, so I played the shit out of this one. Love this game. Would it arguably be better than number 3? Yeah, but I think I've got more sentimental value for Gran Turismo 3. Another impossible port on PS2, Half-Life. A great port on PS2 in my opinion. Really recommend picking this one up. Where are you? There we are. Headhunter, one of Sega's kind of lost, forgotten franchises, IPs. Really like this game. It's really good. It kind of reminds me, it's got this kind of Metal Gear Solid vibe to it that I quite like. Especially this training mode. This training mode is literally VR missions from Metal Gear Solid. It's actually pretty decent. I think the actual game overall is pretty fun. You get to drive around on a bike and do like police stuff, but it's like in the future, so it's like a bit different. Really fun game, really good, and arguably, in my opinion, the sequel's even better. Headhunter Redemption. I love this game. It's fantastic. You play 2 different protagonists, and it's just a great little fun game. We've got great mechanics. The shooting is awesome, and yeah, very Metal Gear inspired as well. In my opinion, that's what I get from it. It's very Metal Gear Solid inspired, big time. But yeah, the sequel I think is way better. Jade Cocoon, another kind of overlooked JRPG for the PS2. The first game's great on PS1, and then the sequel is also great on PS2. Yeah, definitely were games when I started collecting PS2. Games like this were games that I wanted to get for the collection. And my favourite Bond game ever, Everything or Nothing. It's perfect action third-person shooting in my opinion, especially for a Bond game. It's absolutely awesome. You got Agent Under Fire. Another great one. It's actually a really good. This is probably the best first-person shooter Bond game since GoldenEye. But we're going to get to the best one ever made. Nightfire is the best first-person Bond game ever made in my opinion. I think it's better than GoldenEye. It's probably better than Agent Under Fire as well. It's awesome, and don't play it on PC, guys. The PS2 versions, the console versions are the way to play that game. Next up is one of my favourite racing games of all time, Juiced. I absolutely adore this game. It's fantastic. Racing for pink slips, so you can basically win people's cars, betting on people that you're going to beat them. It's such a weird kind of it's like a circuit racing game, but it's played as if it's illegal street races. It's very odd. You race on the circuit, but you're betting and you're doing pink slips as if you're doing street racing. You're on the street. But yeah, Juice is great. Love that one. Mark of Cree, one of the most criminally underrated games on the PS2. Great combat, great stealth mechanics. It's kind of like it's weird. It's kind of like a stealth God of War before God of War. I say before God of War. When did this come out? Yeah, before God of War. Yeah, Mark of Cree. I highly recommend that one, guys. Check that out. Maximo, a perfect evolution of Ghosts and Goblins on PS2. One of my favourite transitions from 2D to 3D. It's got a complete essence and DNA of Ghosts and Goblins on here, and it's great. It's so good. It's that one more try mentality. It's going to kick your ass, but you're going to try it every time to go back to it. So good. Highly recommend Maximo. Then we got MDK 2 Armageddon. I love the first game, and the sequel was pretty much as good as the first game. Highly recommend that. One of my favourite box arts as well for PS2. Love the artwork, the yellow there, it's awesome. MDK 2 is a definitely must-have game in my opinion. Now we're moving down to the second shelf. Oh, this is killing my arms, guys. This is actually difficult. I should have done it just regularly, like my normal videos. Anyway, we've got Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, a great sequel. A game that I didn't like when it first came out, but I've grown to appreciate as I've gotten older. Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, absolutely fantastic game. Mission Impossible Operation Suma. I only had this because it was in the charity shop for 50p. So I don't technically really want it in the collection, but not played. Don't know what it's going to be like. It kind of looks kind of similar to Splinter Cell or Metal Gear maybe, or bought cheaply. I don't know. It's only there because it was cheap in the charity shop. One of the best racing games of all time. Need to Be Underground, Bob. So we all know the sequel was the best, one of the best racing games ever made. It's awesome. Now we're going to get to the Onimusha series. You guys, if you follow my channel for any length of time, you know how much I love the Onimusha series. I adore these games. Onimusha Warlords is great. Number 2 is a good sequel, but not as good as the first one. Number 3 might arguably be the best in the series. Remember growing up, this is one of my favourite growing up, but as I've gotten older, I think I go back to the first one and just love the first one. Then we've got the 4th game, Dawn of Dreams, which is pretty okay. Plays very differently to the original trilogy, but yeah, it's still a fun little game. And we've got a game that no one remembers come out. I actually was looking up on the Onimusha games for PS2, didn't realise this was a thing. Blade Warriors. It's a fighting game in the Onimusha series. Not played it yet, so I don't know what it's like, but yeah, really happy to have the Onimusha set for PS2. Moving on, we have Primal, a great Tomb Raider-esque gothic adventure that I highly recommend everyone check out. It's really, really good. Project Snowblind is another new addition to the collection. The only reason I picked this one up because it was obviously £1.50, so it's super cheap. But it started life as a Deus Ex spin-off. So it's got lots of things about it that really harken to Deus Ex and that kind of cybernetic kind of aspect of the FPS shooting aspect of Deus Ex. So I'm interested to see what this game is like. Now we're getting on to the Resident Evil games. Resident Evil 4, an absolute classic. Resident Evil Code Veronica, in my opinion, an even more of a classic. Resident Evil Survivor 2, one of the worst games on PS2 and one of the worst Resident Evil games ever made. Do not buy it, it's dreadful. Resident Evil Dead Aim is a surprisingly decent Resident Evil game that I highly recommend people hunt down and check out. Really, really fun, this one. I actually was surprised how much I liked it. Resident Evil Outbreak is really, really good, if a bit confusing. I suck at this game, I always die, and I find progression very difficult. File 2, Outbreak File 2. I've not played this one yet. I have played it in the past, but I don't really remember. I think it's more of the same, so I will probably suck at it like usual. But that's the Resident Evil set. Really happy to get the PS2 Resident Evil set. Super chuffed about that. And then we've got Ridge Racer 5. I love the Ridge Racer games. I've got the originals on PS1. Number 5 is good. Not as good as Type 4. Type 4 is still a masterpiece in my opinion, but Ridge Racer 5 is pretty decent. Rune Viking Warlord is a fun little kind of hack and slash adventure game that I remember playing as a kid and really liking, and it still kind of holds up really well today actually. Then you've got Red Faction, a classic FPS on PS2. I love it. Set on Mars. Not enough games are set on Mars in my opinion. Red Faction 2 is, like I said in my video, FPS video, it's really underrated. I think people might enjoy that one in my opinion. Samurai 20XX is a really fun Japanese hack and slash game, inspired by obviously Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. I highly recommend this one. It's so obscure and so different and just so fun to play. Really, really cool game. Moving on to the Sonic Mega Collection Plus. All the classic Sonic games in one collection. Really chuffed to have this one. I do want to get all the Sonic games for PS2 at some point, but as we stand, I've got 3 in the collection so far. Then we've got Sonic Gems Collection, another great compilation with more kind of obscure kind of games. So Sonic CD, Sonic the Fighters, and Sonic R. More of a, what I like about these two collections is that they're both different. You know, Mega Collection Plus has got classic games. This one's got more of the hidden stuff, more of the obscure stuff, which is really cool to have both of those in the collection. And then the final Sonic game we have is Shadow the Hedgehog, which is so bad it's good, and I love it. We move on to Soldier of Fortune, a really good first-person shooter. Quite a good PS2 port, all things considered. Very violent, crazy so. It's an 18 for a reason. It's crazy violent. Love that game. Next up, we have another Legacy of Kain title, Soul Reaver 2. Love this one. I love the first one for PS1 as well. The Legacy of Kain games in general are all great in my opinion, and I love Soul Reaver 2. One of my favourite, if not one of the best fighting games of all time, Soul Calibur 2. What can I say? It's a fucking masterpiece, guys. It's awesome. We have its sequel, Soul Calibur 3, which I've still not played. Didn't realise it existed until very, very late in life. Especially, I don't think the PS2 was even around at this point. I wanted to try out some of the more later Siphon Filter titles. I love the original trilogy on PS1. So I thought I'd get the Omega Strain for PS2. Not played it though, but I wanted to have it in the collection. Arguably my favourite Tekken game on the PS2. Tekken Tag Tournament. It's the only Tekken game I have on PS2 at the moment, but might be my favourite one. Got loads of nostalgia for that one. Tekken Tag Tournament. It's awesome. Next up is Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. Love this game, love the Tenchu series in general. I do want to get them all at some point, but they are varying in prices and varying in availability. But this one was the more common one to get, and it's really good. So I highly recommend Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. Arguably the most overrated and misunderstood, overlooked PS2 games ever, and that is the thing. It's an amazing survival horror game based on John Carpenter's horror film. My favourite horror film of all time as well. Next up we have Time Splitters, a really great FPS game in the vein of GoldenEye. It's made by the guys that have come from that, you know, big people that came from Rare that helped in making GoldenEye. They formed a studio and made this game. I do want to get the sequels as well, but at the moment I've only got Time Splitters 1. A game that I picked up solely on a recommendation. Donald Mackerel Gaming, big shout out to that guy. He picked this up, and it's Polyphony Digital. So I'm like, is it pretty much Gran Turismo bikes? And he was like, yeah, it is. I was like, awesome, got to get that. Really cheap at the moment, like £1. So I had to get that one. Next up we have True Crime Street of LA. A really fun, if a bit jank nowadays, it shows its age now, open world crime game where you play a cop. You can pretty much go good or bad if you want. It's pretty fun, but I argue the sequel, True Crime New York City, is the better game. It's a bit more refined, a bit more streamlined, and it's more fun in my opinion. Another game that I had in my underrated FPS games, PS2 games, Turret Evolution. It's awesome. I love it. I don't care what people say. It's great. Twisted Metal Black. I'd argue the quintessential vehicle combat game. It's quintessentially the best in my opinion. I love it. It's great. Moving on, we've got The Warriors, an amazing game by Rockstar, and everybody forgets they made. It's absolutely fantastic. If you love the film as well, it's absolutely bang on. I've got some of the wrestling games. SmackDown, Just Bring It. We've got Shut Your Mouth. Obviously, the best wrestling game I've ever made. Here Comes the Pain. Another weird kind of spin-off for wrestling, which is Crush Hour. It's like a vehicular combat game. Basically, it's basically Twisted Metal with wrestlers. It's very, very odd. It's very strange. Another one of my favourite long gone racing franchises, Extreme G Racing 3. I love this series. The first two games on N64 are great, and this sequel is no exception. It's awesome. The awesome comic book shooter 13 is great. I've not played the remake, but this original game is a must-have in my opinion. I picked up a game called X Squad because I've got some kind of nostalgia for it. I've not actually played this yet, so I don't know if it's going to hold up, but it's one of those games that might not remain in the collection, but we'll see. And the last game in the collection is Toka Race Driver. I only have this because it was 50p in a charity shop. I do want to get the Black Label version and get the sequels of it as well, because it's actually a really good racing series as well. So those are definitely going to be in the collection at some point, the actual Black Label Toka Race Driver series. And this one, just because I love the case for it, is just the North American case for Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2. It's not the game, it's just the cover, because I'm weird and I think the cover's sick and I wanted to own it. So that is it, guys. That is my PS2 collection. So that is it. That is my PS2 collection as it stands now. Of course, it's going to get bigger. It's going to grow. Obviously, there is a new Project PS2 video coming up very soon talking about the recent additions to that collection that I have. I have shown off some of them already in this video because they're a part of the collection, of course. But yeah, let me know any of your favourite games that are in my collection, and let me know some of your favourite games that are not in my collection for PS2, because I'm always open to suggestions of games that I should check out, pick up. Maybe they're cheap, maybe they're really underrated, maybe they're your favourites. Let me know, guys. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, guys, any of the thoughts, let me know. And as always, let's continue to build a PS2 collection.